This is DW News Africa. Coming up on the program, the South Africans being recruited to fight in Russia's war in Ukraine. The country's former president, Jacob Zuma's daughter, is accused of trafficking a group of men who've been sent to the front line in Ukraine. The government says it is trying to bring the men home. Also coming up, every 10 minutes, a woman or girl is killed by someone close to her. A UN report says Africa has the highest number of these victims of these killings. We ask what needs to be done. Plus, an exhibition on the godfather of Afrobeat, Fela Kuti's work, goes on display in Lagos. Hello, I'm Christine Mundo. Welcome to the program. Are South African men being lured into fighting Russia's war in Ukraine? The Zuma family is at the center of a scandal where the former president, Jacob Zuma's daughter, is accused of tricking a group of men into joining Russia's war in Ukraine. South African police are investigating the claims. President Cyril Ramaphosa's office confirmed it received distress calls from 17 South African men who say they were sent to the front line in Ukraine without their consent. And in a separate case, 5 others have been arrested on suspicion they were planning to travel to Russia as mercenaries. This is illegal under South African law. We'll get some analysis in a moment, but first, this report from our correspondent Diane Hawker in Johannesburg.
The daughter of former South African President Jacob Zuma, accused of recruiting young men to fight in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. South African law prohibits citizens from fighting for foreign armies without government authorization. The accusation has resulted in Duduzile Zuma Sambudla stepping down from her position as Member of Parliament in the Umkhonto weSizwe party. The party, headed by Jacob Zuma, is the third largest in South Africa and is the official opposition to the governing coalition. The person accusing Zuma Sambudla is her own half-sister. Nkosazana Zuma Mncube has laid an official complaint with police and alleges that at least 8 of her own family members were taken to Russia. Sambudla Zuma denies tricking the men into fighting in Russia and has agreed to cooperate with the police investigation. The South African government has confirmed that at least 17 men were taken to Russia since July. They are believed to be fighting as part of Russian forces in the Donbas region, a key territorial target for Russia. The men's families have told local media that they were tricked into joining the conflict with promises of bodyguard jobs in the MK party. Jacob Zuma has long had ties to Russia, having traveled to the country on several occasions for medical treatment. DW has seen a letter purportedly written by Zuma in which he tries to negotiate the release of the men. In the letter, Zuma says the party facilitated the journey of 18 men to Russia to receive advanced military training. He asked that the men be withdrawn from the combat zone. The party has distanced itself from the scandal.
Umkhonto weSizwe as a party is not involved in the Russia-Ukraine matter affecting these young people. Our next step as national officials is to engage the families and explain our position as a party.
In a separate case, another 5 people have been arrested in a similar recruitment scandal. 2 of the group are believed to have been recruiters, while the other 3 were allegedly on their way to Russia. They all face charges of contravening the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act.
What is important is that for one to be able to go fight a war that is not with their own country, there is certain processes that need to be followed, and those were not followed.
The group will apply for bail on the 8th of December. Police are still investigating whether the 2 matters are linked.
And Diane Hawker, who filed that report, gave us more details on that story from Johannesburg.
Jacob Zuma's daughter, Duduzile Zuma Sambudla, is at the very center of the controversy. She's given police an affidavit in which she denies being the mastermind of the scheme, but instead says that she was duped by an unscrupulous recruiter. In addition to the charges laid by her sister, the Democratic Alliance, with the second largest party in South Africa, has filed criminal charges against her with police. They say that she could have contravened several sections of the Regulation of Foreign Military Assistance Act. The act prohibits anyone from recruiting people into mercenary activity, and it also prohibits anyone from joining or offering military assistance to another state. The offences in this act are punishable by imprisonment, a fine, or both. There are, of course, questions about whether former President Jacob Zuma knew anything about this. In a press conference that he attended on the 28th of November, MK party leaders seem to suggest that they do know the men who traveled to Russia, but said that they would be speaking to their families to clarify the party's position. They wouldn't give any more detail. I asked the MK party about the letter that appears to have been penned by Zuma, and the party said that its position remains unchanged, that it has nothing to do with the matter.
To get more of an analytical perspective, we've invited Sanusha Naidu onto the program. She is a foreign policy expert based in Cape Town. Welcome to DW News Africa, Sanusha. I just want to begin by you perhaps telling us about how serious this case is.
Good day to you and good day to the viewers. It does take a lot of precedence because it is the implication is that the daughter of Jacob Zuma, who's also a member of the Umkhonto Sizwe party, is being allegedly implicated in this issue around the recruitment of these individuals to Russia. But it's also very serious in a sense that we have a law in South Africa legislated in the 90s where it prevents this kind of foreign recruitment in terms of preventing what has happened in the context of those that were after 94 that went into private armies, private security companies, and then got recruited into different types of activities abroad. So this Foreign Military Act or Foreign Liabilities Act that we have is essentially linked to preventing these kinds of issues happening. What has also transpired in the last couple of days is the resignation of Ms. Dudu Zuma Sambula from the International Relations Committee in Parliament, and of course, as well as in terms of an MP in Parliament. And that does have big implications because she was in the International Relations Committee, but also being the daughter of the former president. And then, of course, she has three siblings that has now basically instituted some kind of legal action against her. And then, of course, today we hear that they've also contacted the head of the International Relations Committee in Parliament to intervene. So it is definitely an issue that has attention and definitely will have eyes on it in the domestic architecture.
And Sanusha, to what extent has the former president himself, Jacob Zuma, been involved in this matter? And what can be said about his ties to Russia?
Well, we haven't heard much in the media space. I think I don't know whether this issue has actually been ventilated in terms of the response, but I think he's also battling his own legal issues. I mean, one of them being this week, I think it may have been today, that he had to reappear. He's actually challenging a case against him where he's been asked to, by the court ruling, that he has to pay back some of the legal fees because it cannot be transferred to the state to cover his legal costs. So he's actually taking that decision on appeal. So he's got his own legal battles that he's also fighting and trying to navigate through. And of course, we also heard of another resignation in the party. Of another individual again yesterday. So I think in terms of him and how this response is, it's difficult to extrapolate because we haven't heard that. But in terms of his ties with Russia, I think we kind of assume that he continues to have ties with Russia, but I think this issue now actually takes it out of that kind of ecosystem and ambit. I think this is really about what happens to those 17 and maybe others that have been recruited, and then of course the 4 that were on way to wherever, and they were basically stopped at the international airport in Johannesburg. So these are things I think will probably fall outside of whether that relationship that he has with Russia will will kind of underscore whatever comes out of this situation.
The Democratic Alliance, or DA, which is the second biggest party in South Africa's coalition government, it accuses the ANC of being silent on this matter. And as a result of that, it says the ANC is tacitly supporting Russia's war in Ukraine. Is it true that the ANC's closeness to Russia poses a security risk for South Africa, as the DA says it does?
I think sometimes the DA overplays these issues. If you have been looking at South Africa-Russia relations, it's not necessarily one that has created this whole kind of specter that the DA will pursue. I think the DA has also been silent on certain issues when it comes to conflict globally. And one could actually then turn the shoe onto the other foot for the DA. So I think we have to be careful on how this plays out.
There have been media reports of a number of African nationals from different countries being recruited to fight for Russia in the war in Ukraine. Have you made any observations about Russia's recruitment strategies in Africa and its broader geopolitical ambitions?
Not necessarily, but I do want to say that this is definitely something that the African Union needs to take into consideration. It needs to be much more effective in what kind of engagements it has, but also to work with regional economic communities and regional blocs like your ECOWAS, your SADC, and of course others like the EAC and COMESA, because this is now going to have a very important implication, because at the end of the day, we cannot afford to have this kind of recruitment drive happening, whether it's happening at the level of the state or outside of the state, of the Russian state. We don't know. But what we need to be much more clear about is what is being done on the African side to actually mitigate these risks.
All right. Sanusha Naidu, much appreciated. Thanks you for your time here on DW News Africa. Now, every 10 minutes, a woman is intentionally killed by a partner or family member. And according to a UN report, Africa recorded the highest number of female victims of intimate partner or family-related killings in 2024. In Kenya, the number of women killed each year has been rising. Nearly 170 women were murdered in 2024, the highest toll in 8 years, and almost double the number in 2022. Now, in just 3 months, 97 women were killed, averaging more than one femicide per day. Statistics also show more than half of the victims in Kenya in 2024 were young women and girls. I'll be joined by an expert after this report from DW's Sela Oneko in Nairobi, a warning that the report contains distressing descriptions of violence.
This was Mary Wamboi, Lena Kanywa's 10-year-old daughter. She was killed 3 years ago. On that afternoon, she'd been playing outside. When Mary didn't come home, Kanywa and her older daughter went to look for her at the place where her neighbor's child had last seen her, in the house of the landlord's adult son.
When
I shone light under the bed, I saw Mary's leg. I screamed. When I pulled her from under the bed, I saw my daughter had been stabbed with a knife.
The landlord's son is now facing trial for the assault and murder of Lena's daughter.
Stop killing women! Stop!
Cases like Mary's and those of other women and girls are far too common. In January 2024, a report by Africa Data Hub and Africa Uncensored showed a record number of femicides in the previous year. It brought thousands of people to the streets in protest. In response, the government established a task force to address the rising femicide numbers.
We are losing about 40 women per month to femicide. That is a very, very alarming figure. It is a very shocking figure, and that is why this action has been taken by the head of state.
The task force held town hall meetings to investigate the matter. Njeri Migwi, who runs one of the most vocal NGOs in Kenya on the topic, thinks the government needs to support women at a more fundamental level, at the point where the crimes are being reported.
We need to have a lot of psychosocial support all the way from the minute you report to the police station. The person who should be receiving, you shouldn't even be a police officer, should be a psychologist who walks you through your trauma. And then by the time you're able to speak up, you can be able to report properly.
To increase awareness about femicide and gender-based violence, Miguel's organization Usikimye organized an exhibition which they've been taking around Kenya. The symbolic blood-stained dresses, the cold, uninviting gender desk at the police station, and a grave to honor the victims are hard to stomach. But the real experiences are even more jarring. At the opening, Mary's mother shares her story. Thanks to the NGO, she's received counseling and is part of their survivors support group.
Yes, the support helped me to open up. I started speaking to people. I never used to tell people anything. I just stayed silent because I had so much pain inside. When I met the other women, they all had issues, some even bigger than mine. And so I saw I was not alone.
After 3 years, Mary's case is finally in court. And while it's been a painstakingly long process, her mother hopes for some sort of justice. But the pain of losing a child will always stay with her.
And I'm now joined by Awino Okech. She's a professor of feminist and security studies at SOAS, University of London. Welcome to DW News Africa, Professor. We saw the report there, the case of Lena Kanywa, who's seeking justice for her young daughter. Has the legal system in Kenya been responding to the prevalence of femicide in the country? Are victims getting justice?
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I think there are two main challenges in relation to the legal system in Kenya and everywhere. The first is that legal systems rely on people putting a case forward, which means that you know who has actually committed the crime and therefore are charging them accordingly within the system. I will give another example, which is the case of Sharon Otieno that began in the court system in 2018. And until now in 2025, the case has not been resolved. So the wheels of justice turn very, very slowly. Secondly, there is the question of the fact that there are a number of femicide victims whose killers are not known. It therefore becomes very complex for those cases to be brought through the justice system as we know it in order for any form of justice to be acquired.
Professor, activists in Kenya point out that femicide is not a legally recognized term in Kenya. What then would be the significance of this?
I think the significance of recognizing femicide as a crime that's very specific to the killing of women because they're women would mean that it's lifted up to a particular status, and those are not crimes that are simply dealt with as crimes of passion or domestic violence or other forms of gender-based violence. So there's a level of seriousness with which the police, the prosecution, and even the broader legal system would treat these matters, which lacks at this particular moment.
Yeah, and I still want to come back on that one, Professor, because I too am slightly, it's not clear for me. If we're saying that most women are killed in the home setup, right, by a family member or somebody that they're romantically involved with, is that necessarily that they were killed because they're a woman, or is it that somebody is in a relationship with a killer? I mean, just help us make the distinction here on at what point is something classified as femicide versus domestic violence, and what really then is the difference?
The distinction is that when there is a domestic violence situation, you're dealing with a situation of violence that specifically occurs within a specific environment. When you're talking about the murder of sex workers, the murder of women who are randomly targeted, and the kind of violence that we see in what is known as the manosphere, that is specifically articulating the fact that women are going rogue, girls are going rogue, and there is need to target women specifically because they're becoming indisciplined. That is the specificity. So my relationship with my male partner in the house because of a domestic issue is very different from this man within that same environment or another man in the public environment targeting me because of my gender specifically and the assumptions around the rogueness or our inability to conform to particular gender norms within our society.
Coming also to the aspect of the reports showing that women in countries that are classified as low income or lowest income are more likely to be victims of violence. What does research show about why that is the case?
It's not that people in low-income countries have a propensity to enact violence. It is the link between economy and investments. So even in the UK, where I'm currently situated, what we saw, for instance, during COVID-19 was the decrease in investments that led to the rise of violence against women. So if you're looking at a country with a lower socioeconomic status, it is the prioritization that governments make on putting in place resources towards accountability mechanisms. And here I'm talking about better policing services, better health systems, better community structures to actually address and deal with violence before we actually end up with a body as a result of a murder, better justice systems. So that would be the connection: economics, investments, and accountability measures.
And Professor, just taking you back to those statistics about women being more likely to be victims killed by an intimate partner or a family member, what does this tell us about societal and possibly even cultural factors that facilitate this femicide? And perhaps how should women be empowered in this regard?
It confirms what feminist scholars and movement builders have been saying for a very long time, that across the globe, patriarchy as a system that rewards and places power in the hands of men has done that with the end result of violence being used as a regulatory mechanism to make women stay in their place. So all of the advancements that we have had in relation to girls' education, women working outside of the home, is seen as a gift to women. And when you move beyond a certain area where you have been allocated by the system, you are now moving beyond the gifts that the system of patriarchy that has given you, because the public sphere is a sphere that is allocated to men generally. While it is important for us to empower women, we must deal with the source of the problem, which is the system of patriarchy and the men who actually perpetrate the violence. So what I would like to see instead is more conversations by ordinary men who believe that this is not violence that represents them as men, and this is not what masculinity looks like, in holding people accountable on a day-to-day basis. You do not need an NGO program for that. You do not need a government program for that. It is talking to your brothers, your friends, and calling them in when you see violence. What I would like to see is greater action around the growth of manosphere across the globe. The Andrew Tates of the world are present in all of our countries and are thriving through social media platforms, spreading very retrogressive views about gender equality, masculinity, and women in particular. That needs to be curbed because those views translate in real time to rape, to femicide, and also to the trafficking of women.
Professor Wino Ketch, much appreciated. Thank you for bringing your insights to this conversation for us on this very important topic. Thank you very much, ma'am.
Thank you.
To Nigeria now, where an exhibition celebrating the life and legacy of Afrobeat pioneer Fela Kuti has opened in Lagos, marking the African debut of a show first staged in France. Visitors can enjoy live renditions of Fela Kuti's music and explore more than 400 items from his career, including personal belongings, photographs, paintings, and rare videos of his performances.
Fela Kuti, a protest singer, a rebel against autocratic rule. He made it his mission to be the voice of the people. That resonates in today's Nigeria.
I think for a long time, Nigerians have been feeling very defeated. So it's really beautiful and amazing that we have this moment to celebrate Fela because he represents the tenacity of our people.
Never afraid to be himself or to stand for what he believed in, he often took to stage wearing only his underwear. These replicas of his personal belongings are being showcased here. First conceived in Paris, the Lagos edition has taken on a whole new form in true Fela spirit.
Not only are you going to experience Fela's life, activism and his music, but we're also now adding legacy program into what we're doing.
It's an exhibition that will start people on a journey to find out even more about this man.
Though Fela died in 1997, his memory and music are very much alive. Some Nigerians reflect on that today.
Are there people that can fight like Fela, and are there people that can believe in a cause like Fela?
Now, one man's art of driving social change echoes through generations.
I feel like I have a renewed sense of view about the possibilities of music and its ability to move people into political action.
Exhibition is on till the end of the year. The plan is to continue weekly live events and talks in Fela's honor.
An incredible exhibition of the music legend. Well, that is it for the program. Be sure to check out our other stories on dw.com. That's /Africa. We're also on social media. I will see you next time. It's bye for now.